So welcome to my site, everybody. My name is Paul Smyers. I'm a real estate agent in a beautiful Shenandoah Valley, Virginia. I specialize in rural property because I love the lifestyle, and I encourage people to contact me and share their ideas and how they've experienced living in a rural area. Is very different from a condominium or a town, as you know. So let's get into it here. I want to talk a little bit about the uniqueness of your property and how you can evolve your own property in a way that's spectacular. We agents get to show a lot of people various houses, and we see all kinds of stuff. And there are certain houses that I've seen, really high-end houses that really, honestly, they're so boring. Yeah, they're big and whatever, but the thing is, they just don't have any character. When you have a house and you want to sell, especially if you're going to sell it someday, but while you live in it, make it really special, make it very unique. And there's a few things I want to cover in this. I have a list here. I'll try to follow through here. But I want to point out a new feature or an old feature of my videos here. I often have books in the background that I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about, but I recommend them, the subject matter of them, and so on. So just look at them and entertain yourself. I have also a lot of various artifacts and so on that I rotate back and forth here to keep it a little bit more interesting. But let's talk a little bit about making your own house unique in your property. For example, let's say something as simple as an arbor and a trellis. They can add a huge dimension to a property, especially if you have a really boring big old yard out there and there's nothing there, just grass. Put something unusual, something unique with flowers going up over. I mean, it doesn't cost a lot of money, but you don't see it every day on the property. And when people come and look at your property, there's obviously neighborhoods that we've all seen. They just, all these houses are similar in color and everything, and they're just in this cul-de-sac and boring. So when a house has something unique, something that stands out, like a nice patio, or maybe they put some extra storage in their garage or their closets, or maybe they built a shed on it or something, or maybe they made a little garden feature, a water pond or something. See, so you can do things with your property that while you live there, you totally enjoy it. It's unique, it reflects your character. And if and when you go to sell the house, people will come by and they'll go, wow, I looked at 5 houses in that development, but that one stood out because it really has this, that, and the other thing, you see. So think about that when you get into new property. So I'll go through it a little bit here. I mentioned storage, pergolas and gazebos, a place to have shelter on your lawn. There's big, boring, open space, and there's all this grass you got to mow. You put something out there that people can sit in and enjoy the yard and be under a shelter, maybe some flowers around them and so on. And it can be very delightful, but you don't see that every day, you see. So water features, I mentioned that in some of my other videos. If you find a water feature on a property, even if small, it could be have a little bit of goldfish and some fountain or everything. Not everybody has that, you see. Flowers. It doesn't take a lot to plant flowers. I'm terrible with the green thumb. I just buy some seeds or whatever and I throw some sunflower seeds out there. Sunflower seeds are very abundant. They grow and they make a big color. You can put some nasturtiums or marigolds or tomatoes have nice red color, or hot chili peppers. You just add some color to your property. So like I said, if you sell your property someday, most people eventually sell their property. But when you come across a property that's been cared for, it's unique, it has all these interesting special features, it just really stands out. You're going to hit a home run when it comes to selling it, you see. So we'll get into some of the other things you might find. Sheds and outbuildings. Man, it can make a huge difference. A potting shed, a place to keep your tools, or maybe do your workshop thing, or your woodworking, or your hobby, or model railroad, or whatever you do. I mean, not everybody has a good shed, and if they do, sometimes they just got one of these tin ones. They throw it in the backyard somewhere and put all their rakes and shovels in there, and that's it, you know. But that's kind of a shed that's not much more than a garbage can, really. So if you find a shed, you can get these sheds that you can buy. They'll deliver it for you, and you can dress them up and make all kinds of neat features with them. I did that when I was married long ago. We had I think it was a 12 by 16 shed delivered. That's quite a bit of space, actually. You get in there, make a potting shed, and put some storage in there, and hang some plants and whatever. And that gets me to another subject: is skylights. A lot of people don't think about putting a skylight in their house. Okay, and I understand if the roof is 50 feet up there. I'm a big fan of one-level houses or low, easy roofs. Okay, you can easily put a skylight in. I lived in a house for years. We opened the whole house up, and we had skylights. And boy, it just lasts. It's just so amazing because the sun would go up there, and the house just lights up with this beautiful sun. And then the moon would come sometimes, and the full moon, and we'd see that through the skylight. And then we had hanging plants and everything. So skylights aesthetically can add a lot of value and perception to a house, because so many houses are just these boxes with these roofs on them, and everything's dark inside. You throw on some fluorescent lights or something, and it's just not very pleasant. But adding skylights and things like that makes a big difference. You might find a smokehouse. I have one on this property. I don't use it anymore. We sold the big wood furnace that came with it. But you might find a greenhouse, or one of those little sheds that you know, one of these starter sheds where you have a glass cover and you put some flowers in there early in the spring, or you start your tomatoes or whatever. And there's different kinds of features that relate to gardening, like a fenced yard or a potting shed or something, or a water collection system. And not everybody has that, you see, and maybe in your HOA doesn't approve of those kinds of things like water collection. But in a rural area where I live, and I recommend people live, is where they have a lot more open zoning, and you can do things like water collection. A large deck, screened-in porch, wraparound porch, double level porch. Sometimes we used to have one where I used to live. We had a really beautiful wraparound deck, and then it had a 2 foot down, then another area. So also the trees that you put on your property, you can add like 1 or 2 fruit trees. I tell you, boy, I rarely come across a property where I see some fruit trees. And boy, when you have fruit trees on your property, even if it's just 1 or 2, the birds come, the deer come, and it's just wonderful. It has flowers in the springtime, and it's just a great thing to have. And they just keep producing year after year, and you can make your pies out of it, and if you have apples or whatever. So if you find some fruit trees, if you move into a house and you got a 10-year plan, let's say maybe you're going to stay there longer, but let's say you have some kids and you're waiting for them to get out of high school, you plant some fruit trees when you buy a property, and by the time your kids graduate high school, they're going to have a lot of fruit. And you can also find, let's see, more utility. As I mentioned, the utility of value of a property. That's the main point of all these things that you can add to your property. Add some kind of utility, some kind of function, some activity besides just boring, you see. So I'll go through this here, see if I covered everything. I covered greenhouse, raised beds. Yeah, sometimes you can find a raised bed. You can also find patios that are enclosed. Maybe you have a barbecue or a grill there. But think of all these features that I'm mentioning when you buy your property, especially if you're a first-time owner. If you buy something new, think about a strategy of how you're going to increase the value of the property, the utility of your property, and just the overall pleasure of using it, so that if and when that time comes when you do sell your property, you're going to find a lot more interest and so on. So I try to make these videos real short and sweet, cover a bit of different aspects of buying and selling real estate in the rural areas. So I appreciate liking and sharing. I watch all other people's content, and thanks again for listening. I hope to see you in some of my other content. Thanks.